Hello, dear patients. Your favorite doctor here, Dr. Plague. Our previous adventure with those terrible games had me thinking a lot about Burnout. No, not the awesome game about crashing cars and causing mayhem, but rather that feeling of being tired of the game you're currently playing. Let's make something very clear. This doesn't mean that the game is bad, just that it might have overstayed its welcome or became repetitive. Everything is bad in excess. However, there are also games that are so damn good that you enjoy so much that you never want them to end. That is why today we're going to take 10 games and rank them according to these two criteria and discuss the factors that landed them in their respective category. Keep in mind that I'm only able to rank games I have played, so every entry in this video I have either finished it or played for a considerable amount of time. So, get your torches and pitchforks ready, cause it's time to rank. Let's go! Very well, let's start with something tame, because I know I'm gonna make some of you mad with my choices for this list. Here we have The Evil Within, a survival horror game from 2013 by Shinji Mikami of Resident Evil fame. In this game you control Detective Sebastian Castellanos, who is dragged into a world of madness and horrible creatures when investigating a murder scene. The game has some great horror elements, good use of stealth mechanics, and wonderful creature design. So, what is the problem, Doctor? Well, in my opinion, the game is just too damn long. The chapters in the game are very long and drag themselves more than they actually should, and whenever you think you're getting somewhere close to the end, it just goes on and on and on. The story of this game is convoluted and even a little bit nonsensical, so you can feel like wandering aimlessly, not knowing whether you're close to the finish line or not. Therefore, this one is going to the Burnout category, since I feel this game should have been half as long as it ended up being. Next up, let's talk about this little indie gem called SteamWorld Quest: The Hand of Gilgamesh. The SteamWorld series is a beloved indie franchise that has ventured into multiple genres: Metroidvania, strategy, and now deck building. In this game you play as a knight going on an epic adventure to solve a mystery that will lead her and her group of ragtag companions to avoid the annihilation of the entire world. There are a wide variety of cards that you can buy, find in the levels, and get as a reward for completing chapters and defeating bosses, and the overall gameplay loop is very fun. When you finally beat that boss that has been bothering you by balancing the perfect strategy with the correct cards and characters, it is satisfying as hell. However, the game is too damn long.
Why you boring me? I'm right.
The final stages of the game are devilishly long and difficult, with a barrage of enemy groups composed of the most bullshit type of enemies in the game, and you know I'm always up for a good challenge, but this is just too grueling for me. Just get over with the whole thing and let me kill the goddamn final boss. If I've made it this far, I have nothing left to prove to these idiotic mobs. This one is going to the Burnout category as well.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Oh boy, here we go. Now we have The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. What else is there to say about this game? This is one of the best games ever made. We take control of Geralt of Rivia, the White Wolf, a witcher looking for his surrogate daughter Ciri, who is being chased by a group of powerful dark beings known as the Wild Hunt. This is an open-world action RPG where you take on quests to advance the story and side quests to find neat stuff, expand on the lore, or, play a little game of cards, of course. As it is widely known by this point, this game is fucking huge. You can spend hours on end just exploring the world, finding monster nests, random NPCs with quests, getting to areas you're not supposed to be in yet, finding a DLC by accident, or, of course, playing round after round of Gwent. Add that to the fact that the main story of the game is pretty long and meaty by itself, and you also have the two massive expansions that are Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, with the last one being especially wonderful and fun to play. I spent almost 100 hours doing most of the stuff in the game, aka main story, DLC and side quests, as well as getting some trophies related to getting legendary armor sets and weapons, and yet I feel like I wanted even more after doing all of that. At no point I felt like the game was dragging on just for the sake of being long. It all developed perfectly into a wonderful experience I didn't want to ever end. This one is definitely going into the play forever category. A fine piece of art, that's what this game is. I'm sure that CD Projekt Red has a bright future full of great games. Oh, what do we have over here? Oh, it's No More Heroes 3. Now this is a game I thought would never even exist. No More Heroes was my favorite series back when it started on the Wii. The games were just stupid fun to play. Going around Santa Destroy earning money to participate in the ranked killer battles was just a blast. So when No More Heroes 3 was announced, the excitement was through the roof for me and the other 5 people who loved these games. Now Travis has to battle aliens to become the #1 assassin in the galaxy. Can you imagine the type of adventure we'll have in this game? The open world exploration is back, so this is gonna be great. And when the game came out, it actually was. Even though the open world was empty and, let's be honest, looked ugly as sin, the game was still very fun to play. The combat translated very well from the Wii games into the Switch, and the humor and wackiness of the game was top notch. However, the game gets very repetitive halfway through. You're always doing the same thing, driving around an empty Santa Destroy looking for alien battles to earn money for the ranked battles, and after doing these battles over and over again, you start to get tired of seeing the same aliens in different combinations. A curious thing is that I accidentally made the game harder for myself, given that I didn't upgrade any skill until the end of the game, literally before the final boss, so after struggling a lot in the late game, I absolutely wrecked the final boss without breaking a sweat. So, for that reason and the repetition, I have to put this one in the Burnout category. They should have cut a lot of alien battles, or at least make them more interesting and varied. Very disappointing. Speaking of open worlds, the next game on our list is SpiderMan for the PS4. Back in 2018 when this game released and Peter Parker didn't look like a deformed version of Tom Holland, this was a revolution for open world superhero games. Insomniac did a great job bringing this world to life, with a fully explorable New York City full of tall buildings to balance and use as traversal points, cars and citizens to make the city look alive, and many different landmarks connecting the game to the Marvel Universe like Sanctum Sanctorum and the Avengers Tower. The story is also very interesting and touching in moments, despite the main villain being a little bit predictable. The combat of the game is fine. I mean, it's thrilling and exciting for the first few hours, but can get repetitive after a while, although the games try to mix things up later on with different mobs with different ways to defeat them. The bosses though, the bosses are just amazing. You have to use different strategies to defeat them, and it's not just a button mashing fest, which is always appreciated. The game has the typical open world busy work like enemy bases and time trials, yet it doesn't feel as boring as in other games in the genre, and that might be due to the main strong point of the game, the creme de la creme, that is the mobility and traversal. The developers really nailed the concept of swinging around the city, which make this the only game where I have never used fast travel to get from one place to another, no matter how far I was. Except for the 5 times I used the subway just to get the trophy, but that doesn't count. This has been said 100 times, but this game truly makes you feel like Spider-Man, swinging around New York making flips and stopping crimes. This one is definitely going into the play forever category. Can't wait for Spider-Man 2 to come out next year. We swing our way around to our next game, which is Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Well, it's about damn time I talk about this game, alright? Crash Bandicoot has been one of my favorite franchises since I was a little kid, so when this game was announced back in 2020, the hype went through the roof. A story about dimension traveling, reality manipulation masks as game mechanics, and being able to play as other characters as Cortex, Tona, and Dingodile. This aimed up to be the best Crash game ever made. And on a very personal note, I think this is indeed the best Crash Bandicoot game ever made. But leaving my bias aside, let's talk about the game. The controls in this game are just butter smooth, with Crash now having more airtime, allowing you to pull off some crazy platforming stunts. It just feels so damn good to play this game. I just wish I could say the same about the 3 other playable characters, with Cortex being the worst of all in terms of overall movement. But maybe that should be expected of an evil scientist with a gigantic head. Now, the bosses could have been better. The tried and tested formula of hitting the boss 3 or 4 times in a determinate way feels old by today's standards, but works fine for this type of games. However, in this game the bosses barely change the attack pattern after you hit them, which can be detrimental to their overall quality. The only exception for this is the final boss battle with Cortex, which is just excellent. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. This game is long and hard as hell. You know, just like my dick. Okay, my lawyers have told me that I can't say that on YouTube or else I'll go to jail. What a world we live in. Back on track, this has to be the toughest Crash game ever made. Overall, there are 228 gems, 228 inverted gems, 38 relics, 21 flash tapes, each with their respective brand of medals, 4 color gems, and 38 insanely perfect relics. Taking all of this into account, you would think that this game never ends and that the burnout is strong after a certain point, but nothing farther from the truth. Yes, it can be very frustrating at times, especially those damn relics, but the excitement of going to a new dimension and discovering a new set of levels and challenges never stopped for me. Combining that with a goofy sense of humor and a very interesting plot twist in the final part, it's a game that definitely goes into the play forever category. Just don't try to 100% it 2 times in less than 6 months, it's gonna hurt. Alright, now let's get our weapons and long code to talk about Bloodborne. I've already talked about how good this game is in my video about video game spiders, except for its goddamn 8-legged critters, but let's get a little bit more into detail. Is there anything else I can say about this game that hasn't been said before? This is truly a masterpiece of modern gaming. We take the role of a hunter who visits the city of Yharnam to get cured from a blood-related disease, but everything goes horribly wrong and now he has to embark on a terrible journey in slaying beasts and horrifying Lovecraftian creatures. As all From Software games, Bloodborne is very damn hard, but the mechanics differ a little bit from its brother series, with gameplay being more aggressive and shields being replaced by guns. The level design and aesthetics in this game are just top-notch. Going from the Victorian streets of Yharnam to a dark abandoned forest, to a majestic snowy castle in the middle of nowhere, to a literal blood-soaked nightmare and a fishing village very reminiscent of Innsmouth in the DLC. Each locale is unique in its own way. And don't even get me started on the bosses. My god, the bosses in this game are the best From Software has to offer. Also, the OST is just banger after banger, dear lord. Overall, if I have to say something bad about the game, it'd be the challenge dungeons. These levels could have been a fun distraction from the main game, but someone thought it would be a good idea to hide a super secret boss with lore importance and implications in the lowest level of these dungeons. Leaving this literally convenient aside, this is definitely a game for the play forever category, a game that can only be truly surpassed by the upcoming Bloodborne card. Now we find ourselves once again trapped by the whims of the god of RNG, taking a look at Roguelike Games. Which game? Well, all of them. This applies more to some games, but it's an overall feeling. So, for those that might not know or are not sure about the concept, roguelike games are those with procedurally generated elements and levels, where every run is different due to the fact that you lose all progress when you die. Some of these games feature an element of permanent progression, such as unlockable items for each subsequent run, leveling up character stats, or new unlockable characters, but once you die in a run, you have to start from the beginning with a different level layout and finding different items and power-ups. Given the random nature of this type of games, some of them might be harder than others, and while some people might say it's all about skill and getting good at the game, which of course is necessary to succeed, it can't be denied that a huge part of that success relies on sheer luck and getting good items, power-ups, and enemy or boss placement. I want to make clear that, for today's purposes, I'm not including the Binding of Isaac in my final decision, given that, while the game can be punishing at times with the challenges and unlocking methods for some of the stuff, you can perfectly experience the complete game and all the bosses with a normal skill level and some RNG blessed runs. However, the rest of the games I'm going to mention can be borderline unfair sometimes. Starting with Dead Cells, the combat in this game is just amazing. It's fast-paced and satisfying to pull off. Unfortunately, some recent changes have totally ruined the experience for me. The progression in Dead Cells is very punishing, given that you need quite a good number of cells to unlock abilities, and finding the blueprints to unlock stuff is not a given in every single run. This would be more manageable if it wasn't for the fact that some recent updates changed enemy placement in the levels and added some new mobs, and let me tell you, the mobs in later levels can be very annoying and unfair. In my opinion, These changes should have been implemented in the higher difficulty levels, starting at one boss cell, not before killing the Hand of the King for the first time. The overwhelming feeling that you're not making any progress after trying countless times can put off players very quickly. Speaking of unfair, we definitely have to mention Enter the Gungeon, cause boy oh boy, this game depends a lot on RNG. Yes, you get rewarded for your skill, like killing each floor's boss without getting hit to receive an extra heart container, but you can go through a run without getting a single good weapon, getting the worst possible combination of enemies and level layout, and the hardest, most annoying bosses at the end of each floor. And there really isn't any type of permanent progression in the game, just the items you unlock with the game's currency and by doing specific things in game. Sure, there's the elevator, which transports you immediately to each of the floors. However, using this puts you in a disadvantage, given that you don't have any of the items and extra things you collect in the previous levels, and the selection of fiery weapons you can get at the beginning of the level isn't really that good, so it would be easier to cut a steak with a nail cutter. Cool is another one that falls into this category, even though the end of each level has the same boss, so in this case you're better prepared to take them on. However, there are some mini-bosses in the middle point of each level, and that wouldn't necessarily be bad, except for the fact that as you progress through the levels, you get an additional boss. So it's 1 for the first level, 2 for the second, 3 for the third, and so on. The power-ups you get in this game, skulls, are also very RNG dependent. You can get a legendary skull on the first part of the level, or you can spend the whole run getting the worst skulls ever known to mankind. And although this game has some character upgrades as a form of permanent progression, it still feels like banging your head on a wall. These are all really good and fun games, but the lack of progress you can make due to the random nature of things gets tiresome. Burnout it is. We're finally on the final 2 games on the tier list, and these are the heavy hitters. Let's go ahead and take a look at Fire Emblem Three Houses. The Fire Emblem series has been a relatively niche franchise in America. However, Three Houses blew out the roof with its sheer quality. You play as Violet, who gets involved in a battle that casually featured 3 very important characters, each related to a different family and a house in a prestigious school, in which you end up being a teacher. So you have to choose a house to train and make them the best warriors they can be. I'm not going to delve into any further details about the story because I believe that this is a game that deserves to be played and experienced firsthand, but I'll mention just one thing. Edelgard did nothing wrong, and Black Eagles is the best house in the school.
Tell me, he didn't just say that.
Now, for those of you who might not be very familiar with the Fire Emblem series, this is a turn-based strategy RPG in which you control a group of units in battles. You move the units in a grid-based map and face them against enemy troops until either all the enemies are dead or you accomplish certain tasks. In addition to this, the other half of the gameplay is you going around the school interacting with different students, giving your lessons to the students under your tutelage, and other fun activities like fishing and singing in the chorus. However, these are not just mere distractions or senseless activities, as they are used to increase the level of affinity with other characters. This can cause affinity in the battles and also romancing options, which has an impact in the ending of the game. But not everything is rose-tinted and happy, as this game can be brutally difficult. Given that the story of the game is very character-driven, of course one of its main features is permadeath. If you lose a unit, it's gone for good, and although you get access to a mechanic later on to reverse some decisions on the battlefield, it has very limited uses, so your opportunities to make mistakes are few and far between. And believe me, losing one of your students can be very painful, not only because you lose a valuable unit in which you've spent time, effort and resources, but because you get to know them, spend time with them and help them grow and take advantage of their full potential. You start to care about them and their grievances, and losing them forever hurts you in your heart. If you're not one to take on such hardships head on, don't worry, the game has different difficulty levels and even lets you disable permadeath in some of them, so there's no excuse not to enjoy this masterpiece. Now, this game is very long and it has multiple endings based on the choices you made throughout the game, even changing the final boss in some cases, so this is a game you'd want to play multiple times. But is it worth spending so much on your time playing Three Houses? The answer is very simple. Absolutely fucking yes! The story of the game is amazing and able to draw you in from the very beginning. The tactical combat is amazing and rarely feels unfair, unless you're playing on the highest difficulty, and the characters are so well written and developed that you end up caring deeply for them and their fate. If it wasn't already obvious, this is going on the play forever category. I have to constantly resist the urge to do another playthrough, or else I'd never play anything else. My congratulations to the chef. Absolutely exquisite. Okay, this is it. This is the last game on the tier list and it's gonna be a controversial one. Let's talk about The Last of Us Part 2. Oh boy, look, I'm not gonna talk about the pre-release controversy, the leaks or anything that's not directly related to in-game stuff. Otherwise we'd be here all day, but I think it is fair to say that this was an unnecessary sequel, just as the recently announced The Last of Us Part 1 is an unnecessary remake in my opinion. The first game tied up the story so well, the ending was heartbreaking and the game itself was just amazing. But when it comes to Part 2, well, I think they dropped the ball really hard. This game takes place many years after the ending of the original, when Ellie and Joel go back to Jackson to try to live a normal life. However, when Joel meets and saves a woman called Abby, things go south real quick. Abby kills Joel because he killed her father. He was the doctor that was going to kill Ellie in order to make a cure, and because of this, Ellie swears revenge and goes on a murder spree. The story of this game is not good at all, and commits a sin that many have named ludonarrative dissonance. This is the conflict between the narrative told through the gameplay and the narrative told through the story. It can be evidenced on the murder sprees that both Ellie and Abby go through in order to find each other, but in key points, you see them visibly shocked and disturbed about some specific deaths and murders. But hey, we're not here to discuss the complexities of ludonarrative dissonance. We're here to talk about gameplay experience. Is the game fun? Gameplay-wise, yes, it is. The combat and the AI have been polished a lot in this sequel, and there are so many things that you can do now, like a better melee combat, new crafting recipes, and traversal options, so whenever you come across an encounter, you sure as hell will have a lot of fun, and later sections really make you think about how you're going to approach the situation, unless you want your brains blown out or your head split in two with an axe. And I really have to give a shout out to what I think is the only proper boss battle in the game, the Rat King. My god, that was such a good encounter in a closed space with the tension built up high. Nevertheless, we have to address the elephant in the room. The Last of Us Part 2 is a story-driven game, and the story is not good. And yes, you can have fun in the combat sections and the controls are really good, but there are many long parts of the game where you just walk and talk with other characters and take a look at stuff, solve a couple puzzles and keep walking, and if the story was good it wouldn't bother me so much, but these sections are just a bore. In addition, your path is always blocked by something, meaning that you have to take the long way everywhere you go, which is such a drag. I'll be completely honest with you. Even with the shitty story, if the game was 20 hours shorter, I would have put it in the play forever category. Whoa, hold on, don't kill me just yet, let me explain. This game has some very nice extra features you unlock with points you earn by doing stuff in game, like completing chapters and winning trophies. Some of the things you can unlock are infinite ammo, one-shot kills both with melee weapons and guns, infinite range for listen mode, etc. There are also many different filters for the game that will probably melt your eyes after playing for 2 minutes, but can provide a different experience and level of challenge. However, by the time you unlock all these options, you're already tired because the game is too long for its own good and you're already bored of the horrible story. So, without a shadow of a doubt, this is definitely going to the Burnout category. What a shame. It looks like we've come to the end of the list, right? Not at all, because we're missing a quick bonus round. Let's go! Hollow Knight. There's not much to say about this game except that it's a masterpiece. One of the best games ever made. The mix of exploration and combat is perfectly balanced, it feels good to control, the bosses are magnificent and the OST is sublime. $15 for all this content? You're mad, Team Cherry. Play forever. Luigi's Mansion 3. The long-awaited sequel to Luigi's Mansion 2, back on a home console and to the format of organic exploration instead of the level test-based approach on Dark Moon, we have Luigi trying to rescue his friends in a haunted hotel. Each floor has a theme, which I find just awesome, and the gameplay is tight as hell. However, even though the game is not that long, it can overstay its welcome in the late game. And don't even get me started on that fucking cat that steals the buttons of the elevator, dragging the experience even more. Great game, but totally going to the Burnout category. Monster Hunter Rise. The latest game in the Monster Hunter franchise is a complete blast to play. The addition of the wirebug provides so many possibilities in combat and movement, as well as the inclusion of the palamutes to avoid those long walks through the locals while looking for the monster. The new monsters are also great and fun to fight, and the only bad aspect about it is that it's just too short. Even if I spent around 100 hours on solo and co-op runs, I'm still craving more. Let's hope that the DLC can elevate this game to its true ultimate form. Play forever it is. Ratchet & Clank 3. This is my favorite Ratchet & Clank game out of the ones I've played so far. The combat in this game is just amazing, refined even more after the second game. The weapons feel amazing and most of them pack quite a punch when fully upgraded. The story is all kinds of fun and ridiculous and introduces the most memorable and famous villain in the saga, Dr. Nefarious. No, not that one. The levels are well designed and fun, and most of the BS difficulty gangs from 2 have been balanced. This is the only Ratchet & Clank game I wanted to do New Game Plus for fun and not to collect trophies. Play forever. Metroid Dread. A 2D Metroid game that is a direct sequel of Metroid Fusion, one of my favorite games of all time. Sign me up. The hype went through the roof when this was announced, and I'm happy to say that it delivered in spades. The story is intriguing and gives a nice closure for the 2D saga. The level design is tight and fun, as should be expected from a 2D Metroid game. The combat in this game is the best it's ever been. Mercury's team took the improvements they made to Samus Returns on the 3DS and cranked them up to 11. This game is so satisfying to play, and it's a perfect way to... Wait, my boy Ridley is not in this game? 0 out of 10. Play forever. The Last of Us. Unlike its sequel, the original Last of Us is an amazing game. Despite the gameplay not being as tight as the sequel and the companion AI being worthless, this is the better game. The atmosphere is on point, the combat and stealth sections are tense, the exploration sections are less tedious, and the story, well, this is one of the best stories ever. It's impossible to forget the opening and ending scenes of this game, both providing a different kind of heartbreak. This is one game that will leave a mark on you. Play forever. Apescape 3. From a gritty post-apocalyptic world to one full of color and monkeys. The Apescape franchise has always been one of my favorites since I was a kid. The third and last game in the franchise is polished all over the place, this time introducing the new transformation forms, with the ninja transformation totally breaking the game, and a new theme based on TV and movies. This game is as fun as a game about catching apes can be. Oh, and it also features an excellent crossover with Metal Gear Solid, a minigame called Metal Gear Solid, where you play as People Snake. What else do you even need to know? Play forever. Alice Madness Returns. After only recently being able to experience this game, I have to say that I was amazed by it. Being a twisted version of the Alice in Wonderland story, the art and aesthetics of this game are superb. It looks even more Tim Burton style than the actual Tim Burton Alice movies. The levels are all kind of bizarre, and the scenes in the real world in Victorian London can be even more disturbing than those in Wonderland. The gameplay is good, even though it can be a little stiff sometimes, and the combat, while functional, is nothing to write home about. Nevertheless, the atmosphere itself makes this a must-play, and by the time it was over, I was left craving more. Play forever. Castlevania Circle of the Moon. Okay, here we go. I was stoked as hell back when the Castlevania Advance Collection was announced for Switch. I decided to start playing on order of release, and while I must clarify that Castlevania Circle of the Moon is not a bad game in any way, it does drag a lot. As usual for Castlevania games, the movement is very stiff, which can cause frustration on normal encounters and boss battles, and by the time I came face to face with death, I was already wishing for the game to finally be over. Burnout. Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. Just glitch the game and go for the final boss right at the start of the game. The only redeeming factor about this game is that it's not The Legend of Spyro. Burnout. Well, This has been all for today, my patients. Is there any other game that has made you feel burnout or that you have wanted to play forever? Let me know about it in the comments below. And if you like what I do, make sure to like the video and subscribe and you'll get a free happiness concoction. And remember, one game a day keeps the plague doctor away. See ya!